Okay, welcome back to another author interview at Crystal Lake. And today our guest is Brad Ricks, and we will be talking about the third book in the Night Crew series, Hunting Ground. So I'm going to let him introduce himself, so take it away.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name's Brad. I am the author of the Night Crew series. And yeah, I'm super excited to be on again. It's this, I think my third time on this one now, since this is the third, the third book in the series. And yeah, I'm, excited to talk about it. Comes out July 3rd. So um, yeah,
Yes.
I'm ready to answer whatever questions you got for me.
Yeah, and it's got a great cover for this one. I
Yes.
unfortunately forgot to upload the cover to show you people, but you have to go buy the book and see the cover. So, yeah, so give everyone a quick overview of the Night Crew 3 Hunting Ground.
So in the Night Crew 3, so we find the team has been called to a small town in rural Arkansas. There's a werewolf that's killing people in the small town. And at the same time that's happening, Mike is experiencing some visions of Jack's in danger while he's kind of doing the larger story arc of the council that's gone missing. And so Mike is having visions of him in danger. And so we have both the story arc of the council is escalating along with there's this new threat of a werewolf that's attacking a town in a little forest town in Arkansas.
So, what were your inspirations for writing book 3?
Um, so I mean, it really started just kind of on a outbirth of book two because in book two, and after you kind of learn about Nate and Nikki's backstory, I kind of knew the next story was going to have to kind of ramp that up and have them go face to face with a werewolf. Um, and I also love some good werewolf versus vampire stories. I mean, I'm a big fan of Underworld,
Mm.
and so I think it did a really great job of it. And so I think that's always a good classic clash. There's a lot of it's interesting. So my own podcast I do talk about monsters and stuff, and so I did a series on vampires. I did a series on werewolves, and so seeing kind of the juxtaposition of the two of them, it's just kind of natural that the two end up butting heads. So it was is kind of just the natural flow of the story. It was it's bound to happen.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Underworld too, so I totally get that. So, what new psychological torments are your characters facing in book 3?
Well, so kind of the one I already referenced, Nate and Nikki, they have history with werewolves. So, they don't like them very much. So, they think the only good wolf is a dead wolf kind of thing. So, they have their own inner demons that they're going to be working through in this story. And but along with that, I also wanted to add a new little human element because this is being set in a small town. Um, it typical small town dynamics. Everybody knows everybody. So early on in the book, there's a small boy that goes missing. And so the town kind of rallies around the father, and you'll kind of really propping him up as this like vigilante leader. And but the town has no idea what it is they're actually dealing with. So where the team, they're not having now to just deal with the usual hunt. They also have to make sure the town folks, they got to keep them from going after what they think is just like a rabid bear. And so, hunting a bear and hunting a werewolf would be two very different things. And so, so yeah, so there's, I kind of ramped it up in that it's not just the team going after, some random creature in the woods kind of thing. There's also that human element as well.
Yeah, well, that always makes it interesting when you have to deal with the rabid humans and the rabid
The,
werewolves at
yeah,
the same time.
geez, those normies just getting in the way.
Yeah. So, as you said, werewolves play a big part in this book. So,
Mhm.
what twist did you add to the lore? Or did you stick to the tried and true with the werewolves?
Mainly stuck to the tried and true. I did adjust a little bit. I set in some rules only because partly I wanted to have a ticking clock, and so a full moon is a really good ticking clock. So it's not just they can just be out there kind of hunting as long as they can. It's hey, the full moon is in a couple days, so we got to ramp this up. And so kind of part of what I put was um, if somebody is a werewolf on the full moon, they can't help but turn. So like if you've been newly bitten, um, and once the full moon hits, that's the first time the wolf is going to kind of come out. And at that point, as a new wolf, you really have no control over it. As you get older, control is kind of something you learn. And so older wolves can kind of turn as they please. But as a new wolf, you kind of turn and you're not in control at all. The wolf kind of in complete control. And I so I kind of modified just a little bit in that, there is that even if you look back through like Wolfman or American Wolf in London where, they turn and they have no control. So that kind of stuck with, but being able to eventually gain control because then the ones that are the the antagonists, they know what they're doing and they're doing it on purpose. So, so they have motivation and, so I wanted to make sure that, they're, like I said, they having been wolves for a while have some good control. And then I also added a little tidbit that supernatural creatures can kind of sense each other. So as Mike and the wolves kind of get close to one another, they can feel each other.
Hmm.
They kind of describe it as like magnets and with the reverse polarity, and it's like they're not wanting to be that close together.
Yeah, yeah, that's a cool little thing to add into it. So, as you said, you've used a rural small town setting for the book. So, why did you want to switch it up for hunting ground? Was it because the werewolves and the sort of forest atmosphere, or was it something else?
No, it started as that. It started as like that 4 setting. It just kind of felt right for werewolf. It's isolated. They're campers that are easy for the picking. It just kind of felt like a good little natural fit. And since it was, and so I first kind of was like, "Ooh, I want to set this in a forest." And so I kind of I was pretty much like on Google Maps, and I was looking around for good foresty areas to put it. Knowing the team is primarily based in Dallas as kind of their home location, I was looking at what's something relatively close in the area, and so found a forest setting that's in Arkansas, and was kind of scrolling around. I was like, oh, there's a small little town, um, and just being a small town on the edge of a forest, that as well kind of becomes a somewhat isolated environment. So not only is just the f- you know being a forest in and of itself is isolated, but if it's a town kind of surrounded by one, now you can have multiple characters, but it's still an isolated environment. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, also as tragedy strikes, that small towns tend to band together. Everybody does kind of know each other. I grew up in a small town, so that I'm kind of very familiar with that. So it made a good kind of seamless progression into the kind of the climax of the book, to be able to really accomplish what I was looking for on it.
Yeah, it gives it kind of a bit of a fairy tale atmosphere too, with the small town at the edge of the forest. I would think as well, and you throw a few wolves in there.
Hey there, little Red Riding Hood.
So, what do you find most challenging about writing a series?
So there's a couple elements that as I've been doing the series that definitely has been something I've had to kind of overcome and kind of work through. Um, and the first of it is really just making sure that I keep the voice and characterizations of each character. um I always I have a note document in regards to what it is they look like, how do they talk. I go back and read. Sometimes I go back to, like, when I was writing book 2, I went back constantly to book 1. Now I'm kind of doing it to both of them to make sure, like, okay, would that character do or say a certain thing, in a it's hard to say consistent just in a single book, as you're from page 5 to page 300 to make sure that the characters is still sounds the same. but now from book to book, I need to make sure they sound the same, and they kind of have the same personalities and characteristics. I gotta make sure I'm maintaining that over multiple books, and it can definitely get challenging because um, now I've kind of set with the characters for a while, so I kind of have an idea of how each of them I can be in their heads for a little bit. Um, but it could still be challenging about would that be something that this character does or this character or especially as they kind of have grown over the course of the couple books. And then so there's been that I've had to make sure that I keep up with, but also balancing the storyline of the book, but also advancing the overall story arc has been something that I really have to I I have to make sure everything still kind of lines up the direction I want it to go. Um, it's um, with each story, I'm kind of tackling, it's the creature of the week kind of thing that's there, but also there's that big picture story arc. So I want to make sure that as I'm, they're hunting that creature or they're doing what's there in front of them, but there's also this overarching story that's taking us from book 1 to book 5, and I have to keep reminding myself I got to drop in enough hints that the reader doesn't forget that there's an overarching story, that there's that other things are happening in this world outside of just they're like in book 2 they're in New Orleans, or book 3 they're in Arkansas, or but there's a world that's and that's being disrupted and stuff that's happening. So that's probably of those two things, like I said, are probably the most challenging that I have found, is that one, making sure that I keep the characters consistent, and then two, making sure I'm not just focused on, I mean, it'd be really easy just to say great, there's just this story and it's just that, but making sure I also tie it into the bigger picture of things.
Yeah, keeping the books, the book arc and the series arc both straight is, yeah,
Right, I know, it's like talk about juggling. Whew. It's like make sure
yeah,
you
it's
get
like, yeah, did I pay off that little bit of foreshadowing I had in book
mm-hmm.
1 and book 3?
Yes. And I do have I have a list of little tidbits that I dropped in, and I have to make sure that, okay, if I hinted at this in book 2, by 4 or 5 I got to be either bringing it back up or resolving that, and yeah, making sure that everything lines up. So it does take a little bit of planning and uh and note taking to make sure that everything, yeah, that you foreshadow, or that your little hints that are dropped in this book pay out later on.
Yeah, because you definitely don't want to have characters go through trauma or whatever in book 1 and then have them all good and happy in book 2.
No, yeah, you need to make sure that, yeah, keeping the, because and it's kind of what I was talking about, like with characters, I mean, they have their own personality, but I mean, it does change a little bit as the stories happen. I mean, we can't go through life and experience an event and it not, impact us in some way. And so there is that I want to make sure I, keep up with, but at the same time, keep to the true nature and the personality of the character themselves.
Yeah. So, speaking of characters, have any of your characters become favorites either to you or to the readers?
So I really love writing Nikki. So she's very brassy and snarky, and so she's really fun to write. Um, and so I she's probably one of my favorites. I mean, Mike is kind of the main character, but she's definitely one of my favorites. Um, Now, as for fan favorites, it definitely depends on who you asked. I have a Facebook group, and occasionally I've dabbled with, I've posted in there about, hey, if I had to kill off one of the core characters, by the time the series wraps up, who would least like it, which character would get me in the least amount of trouble? And it's funny that even each time I even like kind of ponder the idea, I start getting some very violent side eye, and so not so subtle death threats. So I hear things like, you better not kill Thomas, don't even think about killing Josh, or somebody will say, Nikki's my favorite, and I'll be heartbroken if she died. And so then I'll say, okay, well, can I kill Nate? And they go, no, that would hurt Nikki too bad, and subsequently me. So I'm like, you're not leaving me much options here. So, so each of the characters, I think as the series goes on, and people enjoy the characters, and and fall in love with them or whatever, then um yeah, if everybody I talk to, they have their particular favorites. And in my Facebook group there was a, are you a team Thomas or team Mike? At one point they would have little battle going on. And so it's kind of fun watching people talk about the characters, and almost little fan theories about the characters themselves. So that's been real fun to see. So definitely, there are, you know, the I won't say that there is a particular favorite that readers have, because it seems like they like them all, which I think is a good thing, until, if there is that hard decision that one of them has to go, then I know some people are going to be very upset with me.
Looking for a light beach read? Wrong channel. The Night Crew by Brad Ricks. Vampires, werewolves, monsters, and a crew that hunts them all. Like Blade meets the Matrix. Brought to you by Crystal Lake Publishing, where stories come alive.
Oh yeah, but they'll still come back and read the next book.
I hope. So if any of you are listening and I happen to kill off a character, please don't stop reading because I did.
No, trust me, I read Andy Peliquin's books, and that man has killed a character or two, and all his fans keep coming back for more. Oh, yeah, he killed off one of my favorite characters in the very first book of one of his series. Why? But I still read it. Still finished the book, still reading the series. So yeah.
There you go.
So
I mean, I guess if you can deal with George R.R. Martin killing as many of the favorite characters as he did, I mean, come on.
Yeah, yeah. If you've read the Red Wedding or seen the TV show, yeah, if you can deal with that.
Yep.
Of course, they now hate him for an entirely different reason.
Don't worry, I'm not going to have that same reason why they hate him. I'm actually going to finish the series. So
Okay, so what is your favorite scene in the book, a new book, without giving spoilers?
Oh, so there's a cool scene that happens in the hospital that I really liked. I don't know how much I can say of it without it being a spoiler, but it was like one of those scenes that when I first was starting the book and kind of penciling things out, that one was that there was like an image I had, and that one was there kind of from the beginning. So kind of I guess high level of it is, there's a particular character. He has a cast on his leg, and because his leg was broken, it's kind of the bones are being held together by pins, and the pins don't want to stay in. So that's kind of all I'll say about that.
Okay, that's an intriguing little.
Yeah, so that was a fun. It was a fun visual that I had in my head, and so I hope as people read it that they kind of see that same kind of visual. But it was it was a scene that, like I said, when I first was writing, I was like, "Oh, this would be really cool," and so it I mean, it made it in there, and it was one that I was looking forward to whenever I got to it.
Okay, so what was the hardest scene for you to write in Hunting Ground?
Um, so emotionally hard. There's a scene also fairly early on in the book where there's a family in an RV that is stopped outside the town. And they're they're doing a road trip. And it was that one was a really tough scene because I mean, I really leaned into the terror that the family experiences, and it's mom and dad, two kids, and the werewolf kind of attacks the RV, and they're trying to get away. And so that one's a very intense scene. It was one of those that after I finished writing, I was like, I had to step back. I was like, whew. It's like, okay, I gotta let that decompress for a little bit. So so that one was a really that was a really tough scene.
Yeah, I bet it turned out well though. So
I've had some good from some of my arc readers. There's that scene, and there's one even a little earlier that have been some of the ones I've heard. I've had message to me about oh my god, that was so intense. So I'm like, good.
So, did anything surprise you about the process of writing A Hunting Ground? Did a character take the plot in a new direction, or did everything fall into place?
So the initial blueprint when I was like kind of sketching it out, I mean, it was pretty straightforward. It was that, murder happens, the night crew comes to town, they hunt creature, they kill creature. It's like, pretty easy peasy. And I almost started it that way, but it kind of felt too easy, um like almost formulaic. And I was like, I didn't want to kind of fall into that um kind of, if you think of early supernatural episodes, kind of creature of the week kind of formulate kind of stuff. So I kind of took a step back and I really thought about kind of that small town dynamic. And that's when I pulled in things like, I was like, oh, well, if we have the sheriff, and if the sheriff's kind of in the know on things, but then you get this vigilante force that kind of springs up. And so I started adding in some of these different elements that weren't there initially. And it kind of really took things into um, it took things into a different direction and really kind of expanded the plot, and giving me more characters to work with, to kind of follow with, and able to highlight some different viewpoints on things.
Hmm. Well, so how do you research? Do your research for your books? Do you scour the internet and fall down research rabbit holes, or do you do it old school and pour over the books?
Column A, column B. So on my own podcast, with it being a creature feature, I'm constantly researching for it. I am a research nut, so I have some books behind me that are lore and creatures that never existed, and horror movie collections, and vampires. So I have some reference books behind me that I've just kind of collected over the years. Um, and then I also will start going down internet rabbit holes, and I'll start on looking up stuff, and then I'll jump to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia will start having references, and I'll go to those, and then from those references I'll click on links that they have, and then I'm down a rabbit hole at that point. But I mean, I I love researching all that stuff, and so I can definitely sometimes get way more lost in it than I really need to or should. But at the same time, like, it, whether or not I use it in the books or I use it on the podcast or something, I'm copiously taking notes on stuff.
Yeah. Have you ever found a piece of research that was perfect, but then you couldn't use it because it didn't fit in the timeline or something like that? So I
Um,
recently had that happen to me.
so I mean, for the books, kind of. I mean, only because when you start getting into creature lore, there is, take vampires in general, for instance. I mean, there is so much different stuff. Whether or not, can they be in the daylight? Can they not be in the daylight? Does a stake through the heart work? Does it not work? Does it? I mean, there have to be a particular kind of piece of wood, and like, there's all this different stuff, and there's no way you can incorporate every single thing that has ever been put into lore into a book. And so that was one thing. I think we may have talked about this when book one came out, is that I first was like, I need to pick what it is, from a lore standpoint, that I'm wanting to do when it came to vampires. And so kind of with each creature, I've kind of done that same thing, that it's like, okay, this is what I want to focus on for the lore for this creature. Um and so so for the books, there's definitely stuff that doesn't necessarily, that research that doesn't necessarily make it in. But then that's where the podcast comes in, and I can talk all I want about it on the podcast. I can make a whole episode on it, and which is why I had a whole series on vampires, a whole series on werewolves. I'm finishing up a whole series on the succubus, which was, I mean, that was what book two is about. I had a whole bunch of material I didn't cover in book two. So I have a whole like 5-part series on the podcast about that's all about succubus. Um, so yeah, and so I still use it in other places, just maybe not in the book.
Well, that's an excellent use of the research, I must say.
Yeah, and it's one thing that I really loved about, I've enjoyed about doing the podcast, because I mean, if you like creature stuff, then listen, that's what it's for. It allows me to, I usually only have a book come out every 6-9 months, something like that. But if you still want content and that I'm delivering, well, there's the podcast. I try to do an episode a week, although I missed this week and next week I'm missing too. But I try to do about an episode a week, and so it allows me to kind of stay engaged. And I mean, I like creature feature stuff, so whether I'm doing it on talking about them on the podcast or I'm writing about them in the Night Crew books, it's fun to do. I enjoy them.
Yeah, it is fun to write all about those creatures.
I agree.
So, what is the hardest challenge you've had to overcome in your writing life?
Finding time to write. That's probably the hardest. Especially the more and more that I've been doing this. And I have with Night Crew 3, that makes 5 books that I have out. And I got a couple more that are coming out. Well, I have one more coming out this year. Then there's already another one I have coming out from Crystal Lake in January of next year. And so, with all of the stuff that's out, it's not just the writing. There's the marketing and promoting. There's, editing the books that have been written but not released yet. There's working on the podcast, which I know it's kind of self-inflicted on that one, but there's that. So there ends up just kind of being a lot. And I one of the things I try to do is make it a priority. I try to make my writing time like sacred. Like nothing touches the writing time. That's what it's there for. And usually I'm pretty good about it, but I mean, there are times that those other things kind of encroach upon it. If I know I'm getting close to the end of the edits I need to put in on, that the editor has sent back, and I'm like, okay, maybe this morning instead of writing, I'm just gonna plow through the rest of these edits and get it done, And so, so there's those kind of things, and that's probably been the hardest. Is really just making sure that I have time to write. So that's and again, it's just because of all the other. This isn't writing, at least not yet, is my full-time job. So I have that amongst everything else.
Yeah, that seems to be a common struggle among others, is finding time to write. I hear that a lot.
Yeah. And it is because like when you're doing your first book or two, all you're doing is just writing. There's not a whole bunch of the other stuff that's happening. But like the more and more that you have stuff out there, then the more and more you're promoting and marketing and I do a lot of events where I'm going and I have a booth and I'm out there, talking to people. And so, there's a lot of times on the weekends that's, I'm doing that stuff. So, instead of using my weekends to do stuff like putting in edits or whatever, I'm on the road, working a booth, a vendor booth somewhere. So, it's just making, finding that time. But like I said, I've been very diligent about trying to make sure that time is sacred. It doesn't get touched.
Yeah, you have to. So, is there anything new on your reading list this year?
I'm currently reading an arc, and then I have another arc that's just kind of right after it. So I have a ton of books on my TBR that I want to get to, and it's one of the things that's like the wonderful thing, but also the terrible thing about being friends with so many really great writers is that I want to read all of their stuff, but there's only so many hours in a day. I will also refer you to the previous question in regards to finding time to write. So, it's so I have there's definitely a full list of stuff on my TBR from some really great writers, both ones that are established and ones that I've met at different events and that are up and coming that looks like they have some great material. So I have the never ending TBR, but I always joke with people that if your TBR ends, then doesn't that mean you've died? I was like, you should always have a full TBR.
Yeah, I know the dilemma of having author friends who keep publishing books. It's like I keep telling them, stop this, stop it. My TBR is too big as it is.
I used to make a joke about and really talking about I know some authors that see it as like a competition, or when I'm like, no, I mean, because I always talk about it's not a competition because readers can read so much faster than we can write, but then I see how much stuff people are writing and all these good books I want to read. I'm like, okay, maybe that's not the case. I can't read this fast.
Well,
Like,
some people can.
I know there are some people I see that they crank through a book every couple days, and I'm like, God,
Yeah,
I wish
it's
I
like
could read that fast.
Yeah, some of those booktube reviewers, I mean, they're going through like 100 books a couple of months, and it's crazy. I mean, I'm barely get through 10 a year these days. It's like,
Yeah. I'm usually like a book every week or two, and that's if I unless I get down some kind of rabbit hole. I was on vacation a couple weeks ago. And I was hoping to get some reading done. I got zero reading done over vacation. That kind of put me behind on even my reading stuff. So I was hoping to knock out one of the arcs that I had, and I was like, well, nope, that didn't happen.
yeah, I generally don't read a lot of arcs because of the fact that I don't have a lot of reading time, and I'm just like, I have signed up to do some Regency romance because that is one of my genres I read, believe it or not. Um, so I am going to have to do those arcs, but Regency romance I can usually knock out pretty quick because I love Regency. I'm a Jane Austen girly. Along, yeah, a Jane Austen girly who likes to kill people. So, well, at least in her books.
There you go.
So, what are you currently working on? What can readers expect from you in the future?
So of course I'm currently, putting words down for Night Crew 4. No subtitle for it just yet. I have a couple ideas, but nothing yet. I know Joe and I we talked about it being a 5 book series. So and at least for this story arc. So, after the 5 books, if readers are scrambling for more Night Crew content, there's still plenty of the world to explore. But I know in this, I'm looking at a 5 book series. But number 4 is working on it now, and then I'm gonna jump right into number 5 after it. I've already kind of penciled out both, so I kind of have an idea of where the two of them are going. So yeah, so that's currently what I'm working on, is that. And then after the Night Crew 3 comes out, which comes out, July 3rd, I have another release that comes out October 13th called Dead Mountain. And I believe I haven't seen it yet because Night Crew 3 hadn't come out yet, but I believe at the end of the ebook on Night Crew 3 are the first 2 chapters of Dead Mountain. So you get a little teaser of that. And then in January, I have another standalone novel coming from Crystal Lake called Ravenous. And that's about a pack of chemically mutated coyotes that descend upon a small town in the New Mexico Badlands.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Okay, and then on that note, we will wrap up the interview. I'd like to thank you for being a guest. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
You as well. I appreciate it.
Okay, and that's it for this episode, everybody, and bye for now.